Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
All right, good.
Frank, you can hear us
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
loud and clear.
Okay, great, great.
We don't have Warren as of yet,
Okay, all right.
so we have to wait.
Okay.
All eyes on the door.
Not one, but it's more board members. Hi Jake, how are you?
And I apologize for being late.
No, that's all right. We're waiting. Warren is,
Waiting for warnings. Oh, okay.
did that person answer you, the user person?
Sure, no, oh, yeah. I hope so, right? How are you?
Hodson Rudd? Is this all your people?
Yeah.
Or Don, Eric, Kelly, and Ricardo are with me. I'm unsure of using. Well, that's everybody on
I mean, I get, if they're just listening, they don't disrupt, it's not a problem. Remember when we had the kids during COVID?
I didn't know how to mute them all. They were like.
Oh, really?
It's like, there's a part. I think you gotta be kidding me. This is a part ways.
I've been watching, I was sending you those hearings, they're just
I
like,
didn't know. It was- I was-
oh, you didn't like.
The other day.
Oh, that's fine.
I didn't know.
Yeah, because I have
So when
different-
it's
Oh, sorry,
No, it's good.
because it didn't, when you have an alias, you can only pick one name. I was trying to find, unless I have to pay for Windows 365 and then I can. It's so annoying.
Trying to upgrade me to 11.
Oh, that's how you want that set up, correct?
Oh, on the
Set that out.
town website,
Oh, yes, the,
Okay.
it should be in our Google site too.
okay, I'll sign the one she has.
Yeah.
Scott, how are you?
Yeah, I know. Meeting previous. I have like, or originally when it was Dropbox, I sent people that way. Yeah. Like when they-
Trisha, can you just mute for now?
Um.
All right, I'm calling the, what is this, March planning board meeting to order. Welcome everyone, full house tonight. The first item up is Carson Power, continuing to discuss that application. We have held open the public hearing. We had a workshop meeting last Wednesday where we went over the Part 2 EAF of the EAF and got some a draft of answers and then developed questions off of that we have for the applicant and for our experts. We've also have a draft of this document that we're going to be presenting on Saturday on the 11th at the library at 10:30 a.m. Which kind of goes over all the issues that the public has brought to our attention and that we've brought to the attention of the applicant and anyone else has brought up and have either answers or further questions on these issues and categories, as well as, and one thing we want to work on tonight is just to, and that would be Warren and George will help us map out just what the process is going forward. And Frank too. We have Frank from BFJ on Zoom. Then the rest are from the applicant. Okay, so I guess the best thing to do is, well, first of all, does the applicant have anything further that information you've developed since we've last seen you?
Trying to think the last time you saw me. We've submitted some supplementary documentation since the public hearing. Quite a bit. I think it's all on the.
Well, in February, we declared lead agency. We saw you then. So then since then,
Yeah, I don't believe.
there's no further developments.
Submitted anything since then, maybe just the map of projects that NECDAN owns and operates in Hudson Valley, which I think you discussed last week as well. No additional information.
Okay.
We submitted the site profile.
Right.
Yeah, that was just.
Yeah, that was last week. Actually, well, let's talk about that because he did a couple of line of sight, one to the north, I can't remember, the other one was to the northeast perhaps.
Correct.
And the board, basically you're looking for direction from the board as to the other views that you want to run, being that each one is understanding, the board understands that they are very expensive computer simulations or something like that. Is that
Correct. So yeah, that's exactly right. So we picked those two locations to start. If the board thinks that's a good work product and helpful and quantifying the view shed impact, so we can do a few more of those. I'd suggest from some of the residences to the southeast, where we know there's view shed impacts that can help us quantify what those actually are. If you did not think that work product was super helpful, then again, it is a pretty resource intensive thing for us to put together. I would say we forego that and try and work on something else.
Can we pull that up? I know what it was, do you remember what the files are, just sight line
Yeah, line of sight.
line of sight?
No.
That's
No,
might be a win project.
Came in an email, I think it was last week.
Oh, I know, it's under here.
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that.
That's why, yeah, everything.
There we go. Okay. Oh, yeah.
So what these are demonstrating is, you can tell the viewpoint, the home there on the left is the home there on the north, looking at the line of sight up to where the panels are. They are oriented incorrectly. I'll call that out here. They're facing the other direction, but the height is the same. But And we have tree height data from our parcel, we have some publicly available tree height data outside of our parcel. So we can say, pretty clearly demonstrate, what point the view gets broken up and prevents it. Again, pretty resource intense for us to put these together. It takes a bit. Quite a few data sets have to go into it, although the work product looks pretty simple. But if this is helpful, we can certainly do a few more from specific locations. If it's not so helpful, we can forego this and talk about something else. I think we know there's only a few residences we can see from site that we can see us as well.
Can you scroll down so we can see the picture? Okay, but yeah. All right, so that one was going to the north. Towards like the Augustine property, is that? Yeah. So I think what the board would like to see is one from the southeast over towards Skunk's Misery. One question that came up is we realized that there's some trees going to be taken down on the northeast corner. And there was some question exactly where the ridge is there, if that the remaining trees is that going to open up any sort of a view from the northeast direction?
So, Michael, sorry to interrupt, but I think we were also talking about that in the context of the evergreen area, which is on the south side, of that right-hand array. Lower right-hand array, south of that, there's more this evergreen area, which is.
So which one do you want me to address first?
Well, let's talk about the north.
Can you scroll up a little bit, George, if you don't mind? So just a bit more so we can see the profile. So you can see we are coming down over the ridge a bit, but the tree height is so substantial that it would still screen it.
No, yeah, but that's not this view. I'm talking about whether northeast, right? So like.
Got it. And we could overlay that with topography. I'm sure the line of sight we have, if we want to flip to that other one, we can take a look there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep, okay. It did do this one. All right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was questioning.
Yeah,
But-
so same thing, the panels there are coming over the ridge, but again, the tree height, the height of the trees will remain is so substantial, that it'll still be completely screened.
Can we just see there we go. So those trees that are depicted on where it says 60 feet or whatever that is there, those are trees that are going to still be there once the cutting is done.
Correct.
And one of the things that we can ask, I'm sure is fairly easy to add to this drawing now that it's created, is the stationing along the profile. So in other words, when this says 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, if we had that labeled on the alignment, the red line on the aerial, that would assist in knowing
Oh, yeah,
where
there we
these
go.
trees are, and then we already know where the clearing limits are, right? We do
Oh, I
that,
see.
And then it'd become readily apparent.
Sure.
So
Makes sense.
the thing is, the house from which this sight line is taken, I think, is at a pretty low elevation relative to this ridge line, whereas on the south side of the panel array where the other forest area is being taken down, the views to that area, I think, are from properties at a higher elevation.
Agreed. So, yeah, we started with these two. I think we anticipated doing some additional for the southeast. I think that very transparently is where our concern is in the view shed. I think we wanted to check the folks in the north and the northeast because there's been quite a few who commented.
Right, and that was the woman who was here at the last
Right.
meeting.
Yeah,
who lives
That's
in
right,
that
yeah.
house.
Tricia, would you mind scrolling up just a little bit? I just want to see. So do we have both the image of the solar array and the numbers? Yeah, there, yeah. So in this image, the first set of trees, which are at the 1,000 feet elevation, could you just show us on the image below where those are relative to the second batch of trees at the 2,000 plus elevation?
Yeah, I did not make this profile, but from my knowing the property, it's likely this ridge right here.
That's the first ridge.
That's the 1,000 foot ridge.
So it looks like the tree that measured 107 feet is probably
directly in front of the house and you come down, it's there. So maybe to what George said, something kind of identifying where those trees are on the satellite would be helpful.
Yeah,
Right,
it definitely would be.
But I thought when we were up there the other day, you see how, where you're showing the 3 trees, you're saying that that's representative of the area after it's been cleared?
Yes,
So you're saying therefore that the panels will actually be coming down on the others, on the east side of the ridge?
yes, just a bit.
Mhm.
Just a bit. So, and just, let's get back to your first question. Sorry, Tricia, would you mind
Right.
scrolling down a little bit? I know this is absolutely a focus area of concern, that southeast pocket, and that does a really good job helping screen the project from the neighbors on Skunks, Missouri. So I think what you can expect from us over the next couple weeks is probably a slight revision to our site plan that'll demonstrate preservation of at least some of that ridge line, that evergreen pocket on that ridge line. Because I agree, I think those trees do a tremendous job in screening the visual impact, so it's a priority for them to be preserved.
Do we have any sight lines from Skunks, Missouri on this format?
No,
That's what we're gonna ask
Yeah.
for, it's like tonight, we're gonna, they did 2 examples and now they wanna know from us what other shots do we want, do we want them to do?
correct.
And I think. Well, I guess you have to wait till you adjust that, if we're gonna talk about to do southerly or not. It would be wait for that adjustment.
I think we would do that concurrently, so we would show you the adjustment, and we would show
Okay.
you what the profile looks like.
And then over to Skunks Misery to the, what would the spot be, the Gallagher? Well, you told me there's no G in there, right? It's not Gallagher,
Correct.
it's Gallagher house,
That was the one you could.
The
see
white
from
one or the
side.
the white one.
White one, Michigan State.
I mean, that's the one we saw most plain. And that's, I think, in between the other 2 houses that,
That's correct.
so. Everyone agree, we ask for that, and then the one to the south.
What's the one to the south?
Well, you're saying that you. Once you make that adjustment, so just to see, are you gonna leave all those trees, or you're just gonna cut some of them?
I think probably some of them,
So.
probably the furthest exterior line. to
So
the-
in the same manner, we're losing those trees out into the woods, we walked it or whatever, but if we could see a visual representation of what's gonna be left looking south.
Sorry, looking south from,
looking.
Like from,
North from the south.
Looking north with you're in the
Well-
south of the.
like.
Right, from the property, from the project, in the perspective of the project, looking south.
South, down Bean River.
right, sorry, so we need a receptor, what would the receptor be? I just want to make sure.
So you're,
I don't, well, we need to see a bigger map. I'd have to look at it. I don't remember what's south of. Is there another ridge or any houses or
I mean, Chicomico maybe.
is there anything there to even do?
No.
I don't know. What's that? From Ben South.
Yeah,
Can we see Google Map on satellite?
The next side of stuff is McKee Hill, behind you.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Protocol and whether they're using.
Yeah. Very similar.
Yeah, I think Chicomico and McGee.
Right.
So you're thinking what, that we don't need that one to the south? Is that what you got?
If you're looking straight south, then I'm getting a little south regions, right? I don't know.
There's Bean River. Then just
That's
hold down a little bit. Or up. Yeah, move, yeah, no, the other way. I'm sorry, up. Everyone's using, okay, well. All right, one,
Keep going.
you're right, where are we? Keep going.
I'd suggest putting on satellite, it'll be a little bit easier just to get oriented. Terrain should be fine.
Actually, I want to see, okay, we'll start with terrain, then we'll. So the project is up there, right next to Sugar Hill Farm, right, on the south of 199. It's like 1,000. Okay, now can we see satellite so we can see where the houses are? No, it's, what happened? Oh, go in one, can you scroll, yeah, good.
Do you want me to share this?
Oh, yes, please, to make sure. It wasn't being, you have to share. Oh, I see. It's a different window. Got it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't use that thing.
So that's not an area that I believe we can see from the southeast corner of the site.
Even when after the trees are cut, but we don't want to demonstrate that.
If it's of concern to the board, we can take a look at it and do the profile.
But I mean, I don't think we need more than one to the southeast, do we? Just to the Gallagher's house is enough to the southeast. If we want to shoot one more, that's the only one I could think of.
Could you explain once more which,
So we're, this is what we're talking about.
Where we cut, where
So
they,
maybe like from here or something.
The only other house that might be able to see this is off of Mountain View Road and the Scribner Road development, and that is pushing it. Everything else is significantly lower.
what do we want to just demonstrate that the trees, what we saw with our eyes? I mean, I don't know. You guys, otherwise just we'll have them do the one.
I think it's unnecessary. I'm more concerned about Carson Road.
Carson.
Yeah,
How many miles away is it?
I
Not
drove up
far.
there. I didn't see anything from there.
I took a drive
Yeah,
after you showed me
I
that
drove
picture too. I didn't think I could see the upper fields. at all.
There on the top, under ATMs is Carson Road.
So we can scroll. Do you have the mouse? Let me have it. It's just instead of me telling you, I. So where's Carson is?
see the fields that kind of make a bullseye up there in the corner? No,
This?
no, over to the right.
Keep going.
Over here?
That's
Right there,
Carson
right
Road.
there.
Okay, I mean,
As the crow flies, it's not relatively that far, and I think that's the public view shed that is of consideration. The other place you may be able to see this is coming off of Winchell Mountain onto Route 199.
I didn't think that I could see that.
So there's a lot of trees there.
I could be crazy, but if you go up there at 6 a.m. and you can pick the substation very clearly,
oh.
because the substation glows, that gives you a pretty good right at dusk or at daybreak. That gives you a really good sense of what I'm speaking.
I mean, it's.
House is right there.
Yeah, is there a house?
Near that pin.
There's a few, yeah.
They're building. Is that one?
But again, less of a consideration for the houses. You can see it from the road.
Right.
The public view shed is more of a concern to me.
I don't know.
Why don't we take a quick look at, and outside of this meeting, at the elevation profile from Carson Road back to the site, and we think there's a possibility we can go from there and do one, but. I took a look up there. I didn't think that there was, the elevations would allow a view, but. We'll get back to the board. If we think it makes sense, we'll do
It's 1200.
we'll do the profile there.
It's pretty high up there.
Yeah, that circle right where the pointer is what, 1250,
Yeah.
And what in the site is what?
950. At peak. There are lower.
It seems a bit far away from normal.
We'll get,
As it is, when you look, we looked at those photos, when we were looking at bonus photos, that was 1.25 miles.
Mhm.
I mean, how small?
I don't deny it's a stretch. I'm just saying it should be a
Wait,
consideration.
but Ethan, I thought the ridge line is at 2,000.
2,000 from sea level. Am I correct? Your graphs
That
earlier.
was 2,000 feet distance.
yeah,
from the
we're
house.
Oh, okay.
950.
That was the distance from the house. It
Right,
wasn't
so there you go.
elevation, it was
What's the
marking.
elevation at the peak? What's the elevation at the ridge line?
About 950 feet.
Yeah, right. Give or take.
And that's only a very, very, very small portion of the parcel.
Why
Is
don't
that
we,
peak?
why don't we take
Alright.
a quick look at Carson Road and see if we think it makes sense? We'll get back to the board, and if we
Okay.
think there's a potential view there, we'll do
So
one.
definitely the other one.
And we'll do the Galler home on Skunks Misery is our representative viewpoint for the southeast impacts.
Right, and no south view is what we're saying. Okay,
And as long as Ethan mentioned it, how about where Winchell Mountain Road, it's Route 199.
Or there's that new house up on 199. That sits on the west side of Winchell Mountain. It sits on the top of the peak. That would be closer and certainly in the confines of Pine Plains. So that puts maybe a half mile closer off Carson Road.
Pretty high.
it's like, we're talking like one house here and one house there. I mean, it's not. Like,
Make it invisible.
yeah, it's like, I think we should just stick with what we talked about. I guess, what are you gonna do? You're gonna check out Carson? How are we looking at Carson Road?
We can do a quick look and see if it makes sense, and then from there, before we layer in all the trees and other data sets, we can do like a preliminary glance.
Mm. Okay. Well, that's the visual. Anyone else have any more on the visual impact stuff? All right. George, I want to go. You don't have anything more on the visual.
No,
Okay. I want to talk about the site visit that you did with the whatever that person was, hydrologist or
The wetland biologist.
yes.
Wetland scientist. So yeah, we went out and revisited those areas that the wetlands inventory, National Wetland Inventory map shows. To be potential wetland areas. They did not have wetland soils. They did not have wetland overstory, the larger trees. Didn't see any evidence of herbaceous layer, and even this time of year, you'd see dead ferns or the remains of them, things like that. Didn't see any evidence of hydrology, usually they leave indicators. So I agree with the wetland scientists that those areas are probably poorly drained, but they're not freshwater wetlands.
Okay. Wetland trees, no. Did you see the comments from county planning on the 239M referral?
Yep.
So what about that?
We
And
did what they said. They suggested that it be investigated. We did investigate. In other words, so we're not just simply taking the applicant's consultant's word for it and just saying, oh, okay, well, I guess the Fed's got it wrong.
Mm.
We did go out.
But they talked about it in different season, like measuring it in.
Yeah, that doesn't work. That argument doesn't hold water. No pun intended. So when you have a wetland soil, right, certain things have to happen and it has to be saturated for a certain amount of time during the growing season. In order for the biology and chemistry to set up to create that wetland soil, right? Those indicators don't go away just because you may be in the middle of a drought or because it's winter. So if you were to look at a wetland soil, and some of the members were there, and you remember those pictures I was showing in the wetland delineation manual that the Army Corps of Engineer puts out, you can clearly see what these soils look like, and they're based on color. They're based on, different indicators like these rusts that you see along the root zones and different things. They don't go away. So the thing you're going to see during the wet time of the year is physically water. During different growing seasons, you're going to see different plants. But like I said, if you spend a lot of time outdoors, and you'll know what I mean, a plant grows during a certain time of the year and it dies. Well, you still see the dead plant. There's remains of it, right? Right now, there's no leaves on it. You still see all these leaves on the ground. So you couldn't clear the trees and essentially then remove the indicator of what tree was here, right? So similar to that, if these ferns and sedges and whatnot were growing there that are indicators of wetlands, their remains would be there now and you'd still see them. And again, if you were a trained wetlands delineator, you would recognize them and pick them up immediately. Again, the soils weren't hydric soils and the trees were not indicative of wetlands. You need three things to be a federal wetland. You need the plants, you need the hydrology, and you need the soils. All three. So. We don't have it.
And what about, there was talk of, the species like that, I guess that this area has as an overlay of the bog turtle, but there, it could be in, as a, their habitat is encompassed within that, but, right, it encompasses within their habitat. So was there any evidence of that, or like, how do we make sure that that's?
I don't believe there are any there. I believe their reporting from that environmental company also indicated that they didn't see any presence of any of those.
Are they ever found outside of wetlands?
No. Bog turtle has a very specific habitat. And it's not just every wetland either. So. They're not.
I don't think
I doubt that they're gonna be there. Again, it'd be very difficult to prove or disprove unless you could find one. Like I said, it's difficult. Yeah, and I don't believe the habitat is there at all.
I do have Kelly Slatis, who joined previously from STV. If the board had any specific environmental questions, she's the expert.
Okay.
Mike, this is Frank Fish.
Yes, Frank.
I think given what George just said as your own, source, what he's just quoted on the three-pronged test for wetlands, I think that probably answers, the county's letter. Because by doing what George has done, you've done what the county has asked for. I think that what we've seen in our work too is just what he's reported on the, you've got to have the soils, you got to have the vegetation, you got to have the hydrate content. That's the three-pronged test for the Army Corps of Engineers. And if he's found that they don't have that, I think that's probably, they probably want to get it in writing. But that's usually would be a sufficient answer to the county's question.
Yeah, and George did produce a report.
Yeah,
So,
great.
County planning also mentioned seasonal flooding. Whether that relates to a wetland or not, is that a problem for this facility?
That's, I guess, the applicants, one of the applicant people want to,
Andrew,
who wants to answer
seasonal
that?
flooding That the county planning mentioned, they said that has the potential for seasonal flooding in that area.
Kelly, were you able to hear that question?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. If I heard that correctly, it was a concern about seasonal flooding and potentially conducting the wetlands during that period of time. We did go back and look actually in terms of the growing season and when the wetland was delineated November 9th of 2021. And based on temperatures in the area leading up to that date, temperatures in October were extremely mild and actually did not dip down into the mid to high 30s until a period of about 4 days before we went out there. And so quite honestly, based on the definition of the Corps of Engineers growing season and consideration of temperatures of the soils out there, we were probably just at the tail end of that period. And then just to reiterate, what the town engineer had stated, those gray colors and that rust colored modeling that occurs in the soil due to the oxidation and reduction that's happening, that is visible well beyond that growing season. So had we been out there, let's say after a snow melt, you may see some saturated soils there, but what's happening is those soils are not staying saturated long enough during that growing season to give us those hydric soil conditions. And even if we were, to have hydrology out there, we still don't meet the vegetation and we still don't meet the hydric soils.
So. Um. All right, so we talked about the toilet. Now, what about the bats? Is that so, I mean, that's not something you went and looked for that day, I take it,
Well,
or
the
it's not
bats-
the right season?
You either work inside the, what's known as the bat window, right, to do your tree cutting. If you cannot do that, then the DEC does allow you to move forward as long as you have a biologist on their list. They have a list of qualified biologists to do it. That would be out there to monitor and check and make sure, okay, no bats, this tree's okay to cut. This tree, you know what I'm saying? It's
What happens
much
if they
more
found like
time-consuming.
bats in one tree? I mean, this is like a clear cutting situation. Like, it's not like they're far, they're not
Right.
logging. So they can't just leave a tree. Do they have to come back to it later? Like, they'll eventually leave? Like, how does it?
Cut it when the bats are in.
Right, so then, but will they leave? Like, how does that work?
Eventually. Yeah. But again, it's usually avoided because it's a lot more economical to avoid that
When is the bat window?
over the winter. It's,
November.
yeah,
November to the end of March.
yeah,
November to the end of March.
right.
That's about absence window.
Absence window, correct.
So is it possible to get one of those biologists on that list to do a survey during the potential bat presence window?
Well, you wouldn't want to do it unless it was during you were actually physically gonna cut. Because like, let's say the biologist goes out today and there's no bats there and they say it's all clear. And then when they're actually gonna come cut, bats are there. So that's why the DEC has this protocol set up that you either go during the window when we know they're not there. Or if you're going to do it and they allow it, again, it's within their discretion. Because it's their permit. If they're gonna allow you to do it when the bats are potentially there, the biologist has to be there while you're doing the cutting. Because again, I'm saying the bat may not be here today when the biologist is here, but may be there next week when the logger shows up.
Right, but if you wanted to know whether or not this was bat habitat, given that there are sightings of bats within the travel range.
It's bad habitat. I mean, I think that's nobody's disputing that. It's a
So,
very large area.
Andrew, so what is the plan as far as, you guys are gonna wait? Like, if you were to receive approval, you would wait till the bat window, or you guys are gonna, what are you gonna do?
We would have to make a business decision
Right.
on, depending on when
When
it
is
is,
that?
and we would have a window to go to construction if it was worth. Hiring an extra environmental monitor, and it's fairly risky to go try and clear when the bats are around, right, especially in the middle of the summer, because you're likely to find bats and. Stop work and it would blow up your construction timeline, or wait till the clearing window in November, so it all depends on timing.
And also, George, now, and I guess if any of the other wildlife people that are on can want to comment on this. What about disturbance? So, okay, so these trees don't have bats in it, but maybe those trees over there are off of the cutting area. Like, are they disturbed by the cutting of the trees and the chipping and everything else that would be going on? And is that,
Supposed to a certain extent, but the DEC doesn't regulate that. If they're not, we're physically in stuff that you're felling,
right, so they're just worried about killing them, they're not worried about disturbing.
correct?
What about the different, because there are two pretty different types of forests, the one which is south of the fields is a evergreen
Mhm.
forest, and the other one is a more mixed,
Sure.
hardwood. So would it be possible to understand in which area there's more I know that certain bats like the hickory trees, but
They like the
Is it-
exfoliating bark, yeah,
Yeah.
that's like the shed bark,
Right.
or dead trees. A lot of
Right.
times you see that bark separate and pull away,
yeah.
and the bats like to get underneath.
I guess my question is there a way of determining where on this project site is more likely to have the bats?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
How would that be done?
Again, you'd have an environmental specialist.
We're assuming the whole area.
Yeah, but it's a whole area.
Right, the
that
whole area will be treated with the same bat clearing restrictions, will be preferential for one species versus another species.
Right, I mean, I'm just getting at the point of removing bat habitat, which is, not, do we not kill bats, but how much of their habitat are we removing? And if there's a differentiation between the different forest areas, is there one area which is particularly prone, where this habitat is particularly important relative to the other area?
It's possible, but I'm not sure what the outcome would be of establishing that. What do you mean in order to adjust the construction schedule to?
Just to know what we're doing here, really, just to understand it as a starting point.
I think and I could send you some information. The DEC has a lot of information on the bats and their habitat.
Mhm.
And that may answer the question for you, or may not, and if it doesn't, then again, we can ask for additional information. But I think the important takeaway really is how it's dealt with, permit wise, right, environmentally wise. So if, it's either done when they're not here, so you're not hurting that habitat, right, or it's monitored to make sure that we're not taking any unnecessary risks with the kill. That's what the regulatory agencies have set up. But to your point, it's good information to have, and I can send that to you. And maybe one of the potential things that could happen too, and we'll talk to your people about it. Is there a potential for setting up something that would potentially replace, like, for instance, like
Yeah, these bad houses. that's-
bad houses you could put in, but
I don't
maybe
want
these
them
bats
near
don't
my
like
house.
those, you know what I mean? Because we're looking
How do you
at
have-
specific bats. I'm just saying, it's just something to have.
Then we're erring towards like some sort of like voluntary mitigation effort that wouldn't be required by any sort of regulatory
It
agency.
may not
correct?
be required by a regulatory agency.
Right, right.
But it's good information to have as a fallback or as a supplemental to the discussion. Be able to say, well, here's what is, or can be done, right?
Sure.
Or it's not needed to be done because, again, it just answers the question.
Sure.
I guess that's what I'm saying.
The secret review is not limited to just things that require permits.
Okay, John.
I think you're also
Thank you,
saying
John.
it won't be there after
Keep-
you clear,
Right, the habitat will be gone,
right?
Yeah.
correct.
So,
So you do need to make an assessment, you need to make a determination, on that, and I think to the point that you're trying to get to is like, let's say, for instance, the hardwoods are where the bats are and the bats are not in evergreens.
Right.
Let's just, for argument's sake, say that. Then I think that's what you're trying to get at, is well,
Right.
maybe we want to keep more of this and take more of that. I'm assuming that's why you're asking the question.
well, I'm trying,
Logical.
I'm trying to, if you start from the premise that, we're losing species at a horrendous rate currently in the world, and these are endangered and threatened species, then is there a way of looking at this project site in the context of the area around it
Mhm.
to say, this is important habitat, this is more important than this area because it's connected to this other
Correct.
area where they might be. So just really understanding what the bat habitat is, not just on the project site, which I think is important, but in the context of the area around it. too.
Is that a pressure on the species though? That's another question. Is loss of habitat an issue or is it,
Absolutely.
or is it loss of the
No, loss of
animals?
habitat is one of the primary issues with respect to species decline.
Well, I'm talking about this specific species.
Right, that's what I'm saying, I can pull up the information,
Right.
there's a lot of information on it. And it's information that we should have, I can get that to you, but I think also ancillary to that is, like I said, reach out to your folks to see. Has there been anything done that way to offer mitigation in case it needs to be, just so you don't.
Sure.
Here's a stupid question.
Potential.
Where do the bats go? Like when they're not in the tree, like they migrate? Like what do they do?
It's a great question for Kelly.
Kelly?
Ward's got an article.
If you want to read it.
I think she's on mute.
Hey Kelly, can you hear us?
You're on mute.
She got up and left.
It looked like she went off mute for a
on,
second.
Said
She's working. Oh, but,
Was the same thing that happened once.
yes.
What's the plan?
What is it? Indiana.
There it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know why that happens. It works when the meeting starts and then I lose my ability to have the microphone. So can you rephrase the question again that you were just asking about the bats?
I guess the first question, Kelly, is where do they go outside of the tree clearing window?
So in the winter, the bats reside in their hibernacula. There are hibernacula in various locations in New York State. The regulatory agencies have documentation of those locations. The hibernacula for there is one for the northern long-eared bat within 4 miles of the project site. However, in talking with the Fish and Wildlife Service and looking at the wooded area on this site, looking at the wooded area in and around the project site, they did not feel that the impact at this location would result in an incidental take. And so that incidental take also includes harm to species. And this is assuming that we were clearing during the seasonal window and only impacting habitat, which is viewed as a harm. But because of the amount of forested area that would still remain within 5 miles of this project site, they were not looking at this as a take. And then similarly, there's the same consideration with regard to the Indiana bat. And with the Indiana bat, they look a little bit more closely at things. And the thought there is within a 2.5 mile radius of your project site, looking at what does your cover type look like? What kind of forested area do you have? And how substantial of an impact does this removal have on that overall habitat? And so in this case, with this particular project, the thought is that that's not a significant impact. Now, if development continues in this area and we were to come back with another project 5 years from now, we would have to reevaluate, what the area then looks like, and it may be a different finding.
And who's who you're talking about? This is a conversation with the fish and who was this in conversation with?
Yes, this was a conversation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Noel Raymond Metcalf is the upstate the New York field office lead with the bat issues.
And did they give you anything in writing regards to this?
So they've been extremely backed up, and this was a verbal communication, and the intent is to provide them with a table that shows the percentages of that cover type within that 2.5 mile radius for the Indiana bat, so that they have that documentation in front of them. And then they would follow up with writing.
Mike and the board, I just suggest that where where someone can put something in writing, that's good for the part 2 environmental assessment form. The same with the visual, because if you have checked off, as Taylor went over with you, we checked off a couple of items in those 18 checkpoints on the EAF that could be large. And if you are eventually get to a point, which you, I presume, will in a few months, in terms of a determination of significance under seeker, and you're moving toward a negative declaration, that is that there are no significant adverse impacts, the mitigation that you're talking about now, or the mitigation for the view shed, which may be a tree preservation plan, those things have to be shown in the EAF so that they're incorporated into the proposed project before you make that negative declaration. We don't have to do that if the declaration is a positive declaration. In other words, you're going to do a full environmental impact statement, and I'm not suggesting that, but for it to, eventually on the determination of significance, whatever we can have in writing that the applicant agrees to mitigate any of these items that have been checked off, as large or could be large impacts. That is kind of important to connect those, because what you can't normally say is you want to make a negative declaration, but you need to do the following mitigation measures. They have to be, if to do a full negative declaration, they have to be built into the action. So the types of things you've talked about tonight, like particularly the visual, I could see those cross sections would be affected if there were no trees. So you'd want to see the mitigation would probably be some type of tree preservation plan or just maintenance plan. But to do that negative declaration, which says there are no significant adverse impacts, that type of plan needs to be built in to the Part 2 EAF.
Got it.
I have a question for Kelly. Kelly, can you hear me?
I can.
So in your letter, which was the letter of January the 6th, in the section which is under potential habitat considerations, in the middle paragraph, you mention it's at the end of the paragraph related to the bats, and you say, if a significant amount of tree clearing is proposed, potential effects determination should be coordinated with USWFWS. And since the project will not require a federal permit. So can you explain what you mean by a significant amount?
Yes. So, I mean, once you get into a situation where you're essentially clearing a large acreage of trees, and significant is not necessarily triggered by just a number, but let's say, 10 acres is frequently tossed out there by various agencies as a threshold for kind of clear cutting and other things, and the protections on bats and mitigation and various considerations, they are always changing. And so the intent there was, generally when you need a Corps of Engineers Section 404 permit, as part of that permit, one of the conditions that you have to satisfy is that your project will not have an adverse effect on species. So that communication with the Corps of Engineers or with the Fish and Wildlife Service under Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act is happening along with your permitting process. When you don't need a federal permit and you don't have federal funding, you are then looking at coverage under Section 10 of the Endangered Species Act, which basically just says you can't have an incidental take. And so we're looking at it outside of having a federal nexus. And so that is where that additional kind of side coordination with the Fish and Wildlife Service needs to happen informally, because we don't have that permit. And so those are the conversations that we are having with them now. Had submitted some follow-up documentation to them back in January, which they hadn't had a chance to look at. So during my phone conversation today, they did pull up our project study area and looked at where they had documentation of known species locations and various things to be able to give me, that verbal input that, in terms of the northern long-eared bat, we do not anticipate a take. With the Indiana bat, they want that added documentation of what does that cover type look like within that 2.5 miles. Their perception looking at it is we're not going to have a take, but they want that supporting documentation.
So you're saying that this is a significant amount of tree clearing. Is that what you're saying?
In terms of, thinking about this relative to seeker, relative to, cutting trees and potential impact on habitat, I look at that as a moderate to large impact. I don't look at that as a significant impact that's triggering, let's say, an environmental impact statement following a positive declaration. So there's that use of significant, just kind of loosely used.
Well, let me try to, if I could, let me try to, expand on that just a moment. We have actually, checked that off as a moderate to large impact in terms of vegetation and wildlife on the draft EAF Part 2. So where that's checked off, the board needs to go that next step. Just because it's checked off as moderate to large doesn't necessarily mean it's going to develop into or be a significant adverse impact. And that's where some of the mitigation you're talking about now in terms of view sheds and in terms of the bats here. If you can find a proper mitigation and that becomes part of the proposed action, then that moderate to large impact does not necessarily become a significant adverse impact. Those directions are sort of on the Part 2. I know you have to read the fine print, but what the fine print says is where you've determined that you as a board, because you're the lead agency here, we simply done a draft for you and checked off that section of the EAF as, potentially moderate to large impact. And where that's done, and if you
Just to be clear, Frank, remember, we went over it with Taylor. It's not like you
Yes,
guys
that's
did.
right.
He
We
was-
went
he was
over it with
checking off
Taylor.
what we were saying, just so everyone understands. Go ahead.
That's right. So like of the environmental assessment form, the Part 2, item 7 is, on plants and animals and the degradation of habitat. So those things were checked off. So what I'm saying there is that, for instance, Kelly is saying she agrees that from what I heard, you might agree that they are in fact moderate to large. So if they are, the next step is to determine whether or not they become a significant adverse impact. Now, if they do, then you have to require an EIS, a full EIS. However, if there's mitigation or if there's things that tend to ameliorate the situation, then they may not, and you'd be able to make a negative declaration on the EAF. But what I'm trying to emphasize is that to do that negative declaration, you need to have those mitigation measures built in and agreed to by the applicant, so that they're there as part of the proposed action. And you have time, you have time to do that. Everybody has time to do that.
Okay,
That's what he's saying.
got it. There was some we had a question about monarch butterflies. Perhaps Kelly, you could talk about that. Is that relates to this area and habitat?
Sure. So that species is not formally listed as of now. So there are no official requirements for it. There are, again, seasonal considerations if you want to be a steward of the environment, and projects and project sponsors can do certain things to minimize, clearing of emergent type or of vegetation during the time when that species is on site. And there's specific types of vegetation that species feeds on. But there are no formal requirements at this point.
What is the type of, is that present on this site, the what they feed on and their habitat?
They feed on milkweed and if you give me 1 second, I will pull up my notes.
What about a sandwich?
While she's looking.
Yes.
What did you want to discuss after, species and?
Oh, after species, I don't know. What was that? You said something? Anyone have any other, Dick, what do you
There's
have?
something, there's some reference somewhere, George mentioned it, I think somewhere about glare analysis.
All glare analysis on
I don't know,
the
but-
solar panels.
I don't know what a glare analysis would require, but
Well, they're gonna have non-reflective coatings per our code.
Correct.
Is there degrees of non-reflective coatings or they should be just be black, like what?
Yeah, no, I always do that as a binary thing, either has it or it doesn't.
Right,
We talked with our visual team and decided, highly unlikely that anybody would be close enough to have any sort of negative glare impacts with the projects. We forewent proactively doing any type of analysis and, yeah, it's.
Yeah, but like it was said earlier, though, we should put that in writing. Have them explain what that analysis is
Okay,
and like when it's required, right? And then why it's needed here, right?
sure.
Just because it answers the question, as opposed to just being an open-ended. Just hanging out there kind of,
Gotcha.
they didn't do a glare analysis, they should have.
Right, why
So,
not?
so the board then is, it's arbitrary, right? Why they haven't actually put one,
Sure.
unless it's in the record, and substantial. That's why I made that.
Great.
If-
Um,
the other, okay, are you still talking about that?
I thought I heard Kelly speaking up. So
Kelly, do you have the notes?
been waiting to see what else butterflies eat.
I do have the notes. So we did identify potential habitat for, all life stages of that species. In addition, some milkweed was observed in some of the disturbed areas on site. The monarch is prevalent in New York, typically late June to early October. And then it goes south to winter. So the recommendation there would be to clear that vegetation, during the period of generally November to May to avoid any species impacts. And while that being said, that species is not proposed for federal listing until 2024. So right now it's just it's a candidate species.
But do they, I mean, they don't interact with trees at all, do they? I mean, the trees are not a factor, right? It's only meadows and that sort of thing, correct?
Right. It's generally milkweed, other nectar sources. So, I've seen things on projects, other projects, you can plant specific types of kind of low growing vegetation. I know we've done it for bees and some other things. So, something similar to that can be considered in terms of, the monarch butterfly as well, as long as it doesn't result in, shading issues or anything else with the panels.
What's the low point of the panel height? How high off the ground is the lowest part of the panel?
Yeah, Eric, do you know that off the top of your head?
Yeah, they're about 3 feet off of the ground.
Because I think milkweed can grow up to about 3 feet.
3, 4 feet.
So chances are it'll have more of this once the project's done. There'll be more milkweed and meadow and
Right.
why?
They're not
Because
in
they're,
the woods.
because they're not in the woods.
open.
No, but there's a meadow there now, which is gonna be covered with solar panels.
But they
That's
can
the-
have plants around
They
No,
can,
the meadow isn't farmed. The meadow is.
where we were
probably where the-
standing.
Yeah, the meadow where the wetlands are, I don't think it's farmed, and I think that's where the monarchs would be. Probably.
right, but in all
But
the
they
other
could-
areas could grow in there.
Which other areas?
where there's
Yeah.
cornfields,
Just-
you know?
Just
But
to try
in
this back, the
flowers-
monarch's not a listed threatened or endangered species, it's just a candidate species.
How does that affect our our considerations of that, Warren? I mean, do we have to ignore it or can we can consider it even though it's not required? Okay, thank you.
Put some milkweed seed.
Same thing with bees and everything. I liked it when you showed that picture and they had, maybe we could find like a beekeeper
Somebody
to,
wants to be a beekeeper.
yeah.
Or regulate that they're not disturbing the site between June and October, which would already be the window for the bats.
What, oh yeah, as far as that lines up, so. Okay. Oh, I know what I wanted you to go into next, was the whole, we were talking about blasting and we talked on the phone today
Yeah,
about
let's-
boring holes and the bedrock and all that.
Yeah, so-
And the, so add one more question, and the compacting of soils.
Yeah, perfect, so I think, hey, Eric?
Yep, I can answer that one. We did have a geotech go out to the site and then do an investigation. There is no bedrock that would need to be blasted or anything like that. There are some boulders, some rock fragments, but nothing that general, excavators or bulldozers wouldn't be able to do any of the grading on the site. And then what was the second question?
Maybe Eric, just, I
Let's-
think all these questions are pretty much off of impact on land on Seeger Part 2, if you want to just buzz down that list.
And wait, wasn't blasting, do you guys checked off blasting though on the app, on the EAF, I thought that's why we,
That's why
that's what we saw, that's why we were talking about them.
Yeah, and that's why we checked it off so that we could find out whether there's been any investigation. It sounds like there has been, so
Yes, yep, that's correct.
that's good.
But the applicant checked it off on their initial EAF submission, Frank.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and that could have just been a typo on our end then.
Yeah, we'll check that, and we can always revise and resubmit the Part 1. Okay, Eric, do you want to just buzz through the questions on impact on land? They're all pretty black and white.
Yeah, yep. So the first one is related to groundwater. So we did have groundwater at 2 of our test pits on the site that were 4 feet down and 8 feet down. The rest of them were completely dry to over 12 feet down. So there's going to be no issues with the depth to the water table. And then where our storm practices are, they're actually built up a little bit. So there would be no impact to the storm practices either.
I'm sorry, what is that? What is the storm practice?
Oh, the bioretention area?
Oh, okay. Okay.
I just interrupt because in the Part 1, it says that the average depth to the water table is 4.18 feet.
Yep, so that is based off of online data. So that's not actual data that we got from the geotechnical investigation.
What about after you grade any part of the property? Would it be less than, would you be grading, say, a foot off of that where it would then be less than 3 feet?
No, not in the areas where we did the testing. In the area of the array where we did all of the testing, there would be no impact to that. There was no groundwater even to 12 plus feet down. Yep.
So what's the depth to the water table in what is the quote unquote wetlands area?
There are no wetlands on site, and then the depth to the water. So we found it in 2 of the test pits, and it was 4 feet down in one and 8 feet in the other. The rest of them did not have any.
Where was the 4? Where was the 4? Yeah, where were those 2?
Yeah, so it was kind of in the central and south central portion of the array.
Right, which is, I think, with this conversation about the wetlands, I think that's where the quote unquote wetlands area is, which was.
Are you on? Can we see it on a map where those holes were drilled?
Yep, I can. Yep, I can share my screen. So just give me 1 minute here. And then let me know when you can see that.
We, well, yeah, we see it.
Okay, yep. So there was one here at this test pit area, and then I believe it was test pit 4 down here where the groundwater was encountered.
But, oh, let me go back.
Yeah, yeah,
Where
I'm
did
just
it go?
I'll double check the groundwater.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, page 3.
So that's not where the wetland.
But that-
TB.
No, that's not where the
8 and 10.
extensible
Well,
wetland was.
I think the first one is on the edge of it.
On the edge.
Oops.
It's definitely a low area where that first bit is going.
That's along the tree line between the two cornfields, right?
Yeah, right, and which is a low area.
It's kind of on the border.
Yep, so it's this one here and this one right here. These were the two.
those-
But yeah, as far as wetlands go, there were no delineated wetlands on site.
Eric, what about, just for the avoidance of doubt, TBO 9? To the left?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right where the WI mapped well is.
Yep, that's on the western. So yeah, these two were to the east of that in this area right here.
So you're asking what was the,
Yeah, what was the result of the bore at TBO 9?
TB09, let's see if I can find it. Yep, so 3 inches of topsoil, and then it looks like the rest of it was brown, gray, clayey silt and gravel, rock fragments, little sand.
No
And then
groundwater?
that went down just over 4 feet.
Alright. Alright, so that's groundwater. What about impact on land B, Eric?
Impact on land, which one? The slopes?
Construction on slopes of 15% or greater, yeah.
Yeah. So it's based on the racking. So the racking can be built on slopes up to 25%. So most of our site is less than 10%. So there are some areas that are over 15%. I would say about 10 to 15% of the site, 20% of the site, and we're doing some minor grading to smooth those out.
and how far do the poles go into the ground? Like when you,
Yep, it goes in about 8 or 9 feet.
Erica, just because it's an easy follow-up question, what happens if bedrock depth is too shallow, more shallow than 8 or 9 feet? How would we
Yeah.
get the pile on the ground?
Yeah, so you could screw it into the ground. So rather than pounding the post into the ground like we normally would, then you would just screw it into the ground. So there's still no blasting or digging or concrete piers or anything like that.
No drilling.
No drilling. Nope. It would screw right in.
Okay, so that's
So can I just ask a question on the slope of the land, because I'm trying to find in the part 1. I think you said that it was 55% was 15% or more slope. I'm just trying to find the question that.
Yep, so that would be around our site. There's much steeper slopes around our site. So we are grading some where it goes on the edge of where we're proposing the panels, but there are other areas outside of the panels that do exceed, 30%, 40% slopes, but we're avoiding those. So we
So
put it in areas.
Yeah, so I think it's E2 part F, where it says approximate proportion of proposed action site. So isn't the action site the actual area where the solar panels are being put on?
No, we based it on the property. So the property lines was the boundary. And that's what we do the EAF based on the property.
So you're saying that the amount of land, which is 15% or greater, where the solar arrays are going is what's the percentage?
Yeah, I would say it's closer to about 20%, 15 to 20%.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and I can also share my screen again. And then I'll show you, this is our grading plan here. And you could see there's a steeper area to the northwest section here where we're smoothing that out a little bit. There's a small section in the northeast that we're smoothing out. And then in the southeast right here, that'll get smoothed out. And then a small section here. So most of it, this whole area to the west, this whole area running down through the center, that's all right at a max of around 10%.
What's the significance of talking about this whole grading thing? Like, what are we concerned about?
It's the seeker question. So remember, the seeker form is not specific to the solar installation, so racking manufacturers will often let you go 25 or 30%. Right, because the panels can run with the contour of the land. So the seeker asks if there's any construction on steep slopes of more than 15%. The answer is yes in some areas, but the impacts are relatively low.
All right, so maybe George, can you, like, what are they looking for with that question?
So let's say it was something more traditional, like a subdivision, right? Or a commercial Walmart parking lot, holes and lows and all this kind of stuff, right? You wouldn't want them coming in on these properties that are really steep and then just blasting them all out of the bedrock and cutting into the hill slopes. Take the top off, put it over here, make
Right.
myself a nice big flat site. That's a lot of impact to the environment in a lot of different ways. So in the instance of solar installations in particular, they tend to have much less impact on slope because they don't really change it very much, if at all. In this instance, there's some minor impacts. What might be helpful, Eric, would be if you just clip that surface inside your fence boundary and then just did a color shading 0 to like 14.9 being, let's say, green, and then 14.9 and up, or 15 rather being red. And then not only could you see it, but you could quantify it with percentages pretty quick. Just to answer that question on the AF. So again, we have in writing that not the property, which I agree with you, the AF needs to be answered on the property as a whole, but for impact assessment, here's where we're working, and here's the actual percentages that we're physically touching, which are gonna be much less than
Yeah. It's basically
slopes
a
overall.
picture of what the detailed topo, of what it is now.
Again, you
and
could
what
do
it's
it
gonna
with a
be when you're
scale,
downgrading.
and you could, we could figure it out, but I know it's not that hard of an exercise to pick that fence, flip that surface, and then run that slope analysis. It should take somebody 15 minutes.
They'll probably tell us how many tons of material they can move.
You can do that too.
Oh,
Yeah, there it is. There's the whole site. But
Yeah, so this is the whole site, but our driveway would come up in this area here. So this is that northwest section that we're smoothing out. But you could see the rest of it is this green area right here is up to 10% slopes. So we are 0 to 10% in those areas where most of the array is. This is that southeast corner where we're smoothing out a little bit. And then this is that northeast corner that we're smoothing out over there. So you can kind of see like a majority, and that's why we put the array mostly in these green areas here. And then did as minimal grading as possible because, we don't want to go in and do a lot of earth moving for these projects. So we do look at this for all of our projects to see where's the best locations to locate them. So the green is 0 to 10, yellow is 10 to 20, the orange is 20 to 30, and then the red is 30 plus.
This is the whole property though, right?
Whole
Right.
property,
You
yep.
could overlay the project site onto that.
Yep. Yeah, we can trim it down and certainly show that.
So I have a question about, what happens when you're in the rainy season and you're in construction on sloped areas? How are you mitigating the runoff and the issues around that?
That's where that stormwater pollution prevention plan
Mhm.
comes into play, specifically the erosion sediment control portion of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we typically do is put silt socks down. So it is a fabric, kind of in like a tube, filled with a material, that would filter the stormwater as it runs down the hills. And we put that at, the DEC requires certain intervals depending on the slope of the land. And we would put those, parallel with the contours as it goes down the hill. And then that would, keep sheet flow and then slow the stormwater runoff, going down the hill as well. But, and like that was just mentioned, that's part of the SWIP and that's a part of a requirement from the DEC.
Okay, and thank you. And then you mentioned, last time we talked about the retention pond. Could you just show us on the map where that would be?
Yep, so it's a bioretention area, which is at the beginning of the driveway up here. So this would not, it's not made to hold water, it's more for filtering the water. So the DEC requires that we treat the water quality from the stormwater runoff from our gravel driveway. So this practice, we have a roadside swale that would direct the stormwater to a forebay. And the forebay would allow for like larger sediment to drop out before it went into the bioretention area here. And that has a media about 2.5 to 3 feet deep. And the stormwater would filter through that. So then when it discharged through the under drain out of the bioretention area, then it would be clean water.
And just for the avoidance of doubt, Eric, the basin does not hold water.
No, it doesn't hold water. It's the depression. It's more of a depression about 2 feet deep. And the max ponding depth is 6 inches. So, and it filters the water over a period of 24 hours maximum is what the DEC allows. So there will not be standing water there for any more than 24 hours.
So is that based on soil types that you're able to do that in that location, or do you have to bring soils in to be able to filter the water appropriately?
Yep. It's a, the DEC requires a specific soil media. So there's like a certain percentage of organic content, sand, loam, all that you have to use for that filter material.
And it gets planted. So again, when you drive in, it's going to look like a planted depression.
Mhm.
There's plants that you have, you can choose from to plant
Inside, in the
inside of
depression.
it. Right,
I
so
see.
again, it's almost like a constructed wetland, similar kind of concept.
Mhm,
You have specific plants that can stand the inundation and whatnot,
mhm,
and at the same time, that soil media provides the filtering,
right.
so it's
It's the same concept you would see in front of large shopping centers or housing developments to control the water, correct?
they do ponds a lot more. Right, so this is not really dealing with quantity control. This is quality.
Yeah.
It's just cleaning water, not slowing it down per se. Not intentionally slowing, right? We're not doing
All
a
right.
10-year storm on your storm deck.
What's the next question?
All right, Eric, next question is, proposed action may involve the excavation and removal of more than 1,000 tons of natural material.
Yep, so we are not exporting or importing any material other than the soil media for the bioretention or the stone for the gravel driveway, but all soil on site will remain on site. So there will be some cuts and there will be some fills, but it'll balance out.
Perfect. Next one, proposed action may involve construction that continues for more than 1 year or in multiple phases.
Yeah, so I think you can answer this too, but it'll be in one phase. And then it's typically completed in about 6 months. If you can confirm that, Andrew.
Yep. And F, the proposed vegetation may result in increased erosion, the proposed action may result in increased erosion, whether from physical disturbance or vegetation removal, including from treatment of herbicides. So just to clarify, we did revise our O&M plan from the original submission several weeks ago. We did discuss with Nexamp, and there will be no herbicides used in the operations of the facility. In terms of, Eric, could you comment on any increase in erosion from physical disturbance or veg
Yep.
removal?
Yeah, yep, I can comment on that. And it also kind of goes into those slopes on 15% or greater. So for solar projects, the DEC does regulate this and they require us to put in what's called a permanent level spreader. at certain intervals as you go down the slope. So we show that on our site plans. The level spreader, it's a trench 2 feet wide by 1 foot deep, and it's filled with 1 inch stone. So then as the water goes down the hill, it would filter into this stone, it would spread out, and then it would maintain its sheet flow condition as it goes down the hill. So that eliminates any risk of erosion.
And which hill are we talking about here?
Yeah, just any slope, really, throughout the site. Yeah, just any slope that we were talking about. So throughout
So
the
there was
entire array.
There was some concern with the westerly, where the array approaches the property line of Sugar Hill Farm and then it drops off there. That's like an area where that would be done.
Yeah, yep. It would be pretty much throughout the entire array. We show them.
So that's on there then, towards the
That's shown
west,
on the plan.
towards the west.
Yeah. So if you see these darker lines on this plan here, that would be the level spreaders that we're proposing. So you could see in these flatter areas, we don't have any in these flatter areas here, but when it gets a little bit steeper, you'll see more of them be put in place. And that's to maintain sheet flow and reduce erosion.
But there's only really one over there on the west. That's enough, I guess, or it's not.
Well, yeah. In this
Like, what
area-
about to the left where outside the fence there, and then they're like right in that, yeah, this, where that's gonna be cleared, right? Because of the tree shading.
Yep, yeah, but no panels will be over there, and then that would be maintained as a, meadow type of vegetation, so it'll be kind of a thicker type of vegetation.
But there'll be no increased flow towards that neighbored property there?
No, so as part of our SWIP, we did stormwater calculations, so we had a look at what the existing cover types were, and then also what the proposed cover types are, and then we ran the calculations to show what the peak runoff would be, and based on that, we're not increasing the peak rate of runoff, so then there would be no flooding of any downstream or any neighbors next to us.
All right.
All right, and then last one, we were definitely not in a coastal erosion hazard area, so. Let's see. Yeah, what did you want to cover? Next, Michael, any other questions for us?
Well, I have the next, what I wanted to go over. Don't necessarily flows logically. I don't know if I'm skipping anything, but one thing I wanted to go over was in the part 2, where it talks about the change in the intensity of use of the land and all that. Frank, do you have that in front of you at the moment?
Yeah, I think you're under
18 or
18,
17?
yeah, you're on the last one, 18, which is the consistency with, 18 is consistency with community character. And in that sense, we did check that off as, yes, there is an impact because, the character of the land here is rural, partly agricultural and forested. So you're really talking about a significant clearing of the land and putting in something that's, different, significantly different. So that is a difference in community character. I think there's things you can do to mitigate that and they've proposed some of them type of meadow style planting that they would have around those solar panels and keeping certain trees and vegetative buffer. So there are things that can be done, but it is a change in community character.
And one thing, it's getting back on just a comment about the trees. We talked last time about possibly, and we know it's a very small amount of area, that anywhere you could plant trees that's not going to be used for farming, like that field gets cut off to the southeast. Whatever, I know it's not going to be much compared to the 20-something acres, but if there could be some mitigation by planting trees, just, not for screening, just for growing there,
Sure.
replacing cut.
We could take a look at it, and it's like any tree we plant or cut or panel we build or not build, it all comes at a cost of the project, so we'd have to make an evaluation there and see if it would be worthwhile for us to consider.
Of course, or, you know, some of, or these plants that are like carbon sink kind of plant, carbon captured plants. I don't know if there's something, but the ones that have, I don't, you know, Sarah, what are the ones like Stan is always talking about, right? The ones that have the very deep roots, the carbon capture, do you know what? I don't know, we'll have to research that.
So, I don't know offhand.
Hmm.
The
But-
net carbon impact of the project is overwhelming.
I understand.
Just have to.
I understand.
Every little bit helps.
But when trying to balance against this large loss of the trees and. What was I gonna say? Oh, back to what we were talking about. Okay, so then the other one was at 17 then, is it 17 that talks about, is it?
17 is
consistent with-
consistency with the community plan, with the comprehensive plan. It's one that cuts two ways. You do have, you do have a solar law and you do provide for the tier 3 solar installation. So in that sense, I think there's consistency. When we did do the plan update, did we see this coming on this location? No. But we didn't check it because you recently did, the solar farm zoning code. So it's clear that you were anticipating, or you were okay on anticipating some solar application.
But when we did the comprehensive plan, we anticipated passing that solar law. I believe that was one of the
Yeah,
goals, right?
in a way, that's true. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. That is true. We just didn't know where, so we didn't locate anything on the
Right.
comprehensive plan map.
So therefore, in my mind, that's kind of folded into the seeker done for those two things, not necessarily in this, right? Those calculations were done when the comprehensive plan was enacted, when the solar law was enacted, the town board did their seeker review of that. And that.
Yeah, and
Or
I
it's like-
think that's why we checked consistency with community plans is, okay.
Right.
We
Right.
didn't think that was an issue, but it's number 18. For us, it was, kind of, as you've discussed earlier, it was item 7, which is plants and animals, and then the aesthetic resources, the visual, which was talked about tonight, and then really just 18, consistency with community character.
Right. And then that kind of folds it to that too, a little bit too, because like that had to be taken into account when those laws are passed, when the comprehensive plan was done. To some extent, at least.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's a tough sell to say something's allowed and then at the same time, it's a positive impact.
Right.
Based on the character, then
Right.
it shouldn't have been allowed.
Okay,
One more.
sure.
Question 15 talks about noise. I know we talked
Mhm.
about traffic and I think we deal with that, but noise, is it? I'm a little encouraged that they said some of these things will screw in,
Right.
especially when quieter than pile driving.
But the noise of the
trees are
tree.
close.
So obviously, once it's built, there's gonna be no noise, but the
Right.
construction,
Right.
what mitigations can we make a noise, just hourly? And,
Days and hours,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
those are the big ones you can do on that. You can.
Give people their weekends free of noise.
and where on the site will the chipping or whatever happens to the trees be done, the ones that are cut down?
There's some other way to do it on the chip, remember we talked?
Yeah, what did we decide? Do you have any,
We didn't,
I mean, what did,
Decided.
not decide,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
what did the applicant say?
Yeah, I think, just by the number of trees will have to be chipping on site, I think, the larger trees will be hauled off site for disposal, but the ones that could be chipped on site will be, I think the chipping activity, we're expecting to take about 2 weeks, and that'll be,
Where on the site will the chipping be done?
we designated the center of the site in the tree disposal plan,
Okay,
so it would be.
like up on top of the hill. Which at least is away from that house that when they had the logging there, they were upset about that, so we got there. And I could understand why, I mean. It's gonna be, do they have an estimate how long all that's gonna take? The tree, the 2 weeks of tree.
2 weeks of chipping activity, yeah, what was the estimate we got from the tree contractor.
I'm sorry, Dick, I kind of took over your question. Is there anything else you have on?
no, I mean, yeah, I think I'm okay. I mean,
Hmm.
it is what it is,
All right, so next I would Warren. So process was, so we're having this meeting on Saturday where we have a dive with all these comments and these categories listed out with maybe some more questions and where we're going to ask for more. And we've kind of gone over that more information from the applicant. So we just keep plugging away at this and
Well,
then,
at some point you have to,
Right.
be making your secret determination.
but we have to feel we have enough, all the information.
Well, I don't know.
In
I'll
order
have I mean, I didn't, when did you fill out part two? I wouldn't.
We did a draft. It's not
Last week.
officially, but we
Okay,
did it during our workshop
Yeah,
session.
I was hoping I would get some information from the workshop, which I wasn't.
I thought it went to you, but we can resend it and make sure.
You can send me all of that?
Sure.
And
And as
then
Taylor's comments that
we
we,
were gonna make a compilation of comments from the public, make sure we covered all the comments of the public.
yeah, well, we have it in the minutes and then we have notes that each of the members have made.
Okay.
We have this document that, so then we took all the comments and then put it in categories.
Mhm.
It's, I guess we put it up. Let's put that up. You know, the thing that says draft, I'm not sure the exact title. If you go to the, in our workspace.
So Michael, I was adding comments to that.
Yep, so was I. I saw you. I was on there with you. I was answering something. I was like, well, that's a good question. I mean, what is the name of the file? Because I can't remember. off the top of my head.
It is, let's see,
Pulver's Corner Solar Public Comment Aggregation.
draft, I think it's
No.
called
No.
draft issue. Draft issues in response to Carson Power Solar
So
application.
close it now.
Yes, please, if you could pull in.
It was just added to the shared folder.
Oh, no, it was been there.
Oh, that's on the show.
I flushed it out. I was,
Ours are the public.
no, it's ours. Actually, why don't you take it off the screen for now, please?
Oh, sorry.
And
Well, I
then
can't.
you can't?
I mean, I have to,
Oh, all right.
it's not the Zoom, it's,
Okay.
I mean, I can take it off.
That's it right there. Draft
Yeah.
issues. Edited today by Helen.
You want me to share this?
Yes, please.
Did anyone get the next thing in the mail?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Right.
Wow.
It's coupon to sign up for next Sam, 10% off. Or, yeah. All right, so I don't know if anyone else had an opportunity to, this has been sitting there, you know, a couple of weeks. But Helen, no, it was only, remember, this is in the workspace that we created on for us as a board to work on. Okay, so having listened to the comments from the public, obviously we, you know, you have categories of environmental, we have the wetlands, the trees, the species around, we can went over a lot of that tonight. Quality of life, property values was mentioned, visual impacts, noise and lighting, traffic. I don't, did you, Helen, what did you mean by this?
That because the question came up in the workshop about whether the community solar aspect of this was going to have any impact on the ability for residents of Pine Plains to do rooftop solar based on power purchase agreements with Central Hudson. And whether there's a limit which Central Hudson has for the amount of renewable energy that they can purchase in any given time, and therefore the rooftop solar possibilities might be reduced.
So the short answer is no. So someone applying for an interconnection agreement for rooftop installation, it's always going to be contingent on what's going on in the grid, and can the grid accept excess energy from the installation. It's not going to be, the restriction is not going to come from Central Hudson or them hitting a quota on renewable energy or anything like that. They do have rec mandates for how many recs they need to purchase on an annual basis. That would be very different than someone's rooftop project where you want to put a rooftop on, and if you're not home and it's sunny out, you can get some bill credits back from the utility. It'd be regulated completely different. So nothing to do with the PPA or how bill credits are allocated. There'd be no cap on Pine Plains or anything like that. If you wanted to do a rooftop project, as long as there's the physical capacity on the grid to accommodate your project, you'll be. So this would not stop anybody.
And this connecting into the grid won't have any effect on the capacity of the rest of Pine Plains?
Well, it'll take up some of the capacity for generation onto the grid, right? So, this project happening, right? Think of the three-phase lines like a pipeline that can only hold so much generation. Right, so it makes it less likely that there would be additional projects on this same circuit of our scale. Again, we're talking about,
Right, but it
Yeah.
won't affect the homeowner or business that's putting it on their roof.
no, there's always room for small arrays like that.
Do you have any paperwork or anything from Central Hudson, like approving the project or
Yeah,
the connection?
we have a connection agreement.
Okay,
we
and it's
sent
in the
it out.
file? Or do we have that
If
or?
not, we can upload that, that's fine.
Okay,
That's totally fine. You can also, it's, the Q data is publicly available, so you can go online and look at our project on Central Hudson's database. It's,
okay.
a lot of stuff there. It's pretty boring. We can upload the interconnection agreement to verify our agreement with Central Hudson.
Right.
I'm happy to do that.
Soils and farmland, gone over that tonight. The current farmer, we noticed, we have not heard from him, so. As Kate said, they're a pretty large operation. No, this is the boards, this is the thing that we've been working on as a board.
Just want to make sure you get it.
I will. To be honest, much of it didn't exist until today. Yeah, besides these comments here. So then, except this overall categories. Safety, fire. Oh, and I talked to Andrew about this. I talked to Brian. There were some questions that they wanted the plan fleshed out as far as what kind of, what is it, a knock box or and et cetera. Did you talk to him? You didn't talk to him.
No,
Oh, I thought you were
so
gonna
we protocol is always to get a review of the site plans from local fire department, EMS, just to make sure they're comfortable with how they can have access to the site. We did ask for a review from the fire department in January. We didn't get one. So after we talked earlier, I sent him an email, or someone else from my team sent an email re-requesting the review from the fire department. So whatever their comments are, we can accommodate ourselves.
Yeah, I think there's just emails crossing and not.
Sure, it's probably
You
just
guys just need to get together.
clarifications on how the boxes are set up and access and.
Oh, Dick had a question about lightning. Is there any sort of lightning hazard? Is there lightning rods? Like, do these things get struck by lightning or anything like that?
No, not to my knowledge. Everything's grounded and built to the National Electric Code, so
We went over toxicity, as people brought up toxicity and EM radiation, and both of those things we found no evidence for that this is an issue with solar panels and the radiation. I mean, it doesn't, if there is any sort of magnetic field generated by a wire, I mean, as soon as you're more than 10 feet away from it, there's not. And not saying that there is an issue, but if there was, like, distance is inversely proportional. Anyway, regulatory, solar policy and choice of applicants. So we went, we talked about, a lot of people talked about, why Carson Power, who's Carson Power? Why don't you try to find someone better, etc., or whatever, or someone more known. And this is out of our purview, nothing to do with us. This is a private entity contracting with a private person to buy the property and put this business on. Seeker, just going over the seeker process, due diligence, again, beyond the construction bond and a decommissioning bond and plan, we don't, we don't have any purview into, like, oh, is Carson Power financially sound? What is their, is Nexamp going to go out of business tomorrow? Is this a financially feasible project for them to do? It's not our business. As long as they put that bond up, that will make sure that any sort of risk or harm. Warren, would you agree with what I'm saying? Okay, you know, we don't delve into that. And a lot of people brought that issues up. Transparency. Gonna go over, I mean, that's just having to do with our operations, as far as noticing, and I went over with, and we'll go over on Saturday, all the noticing that we did for this, and we've been very transparent, and all the documents are available online. All the meetings are videotaped and are available on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. Long and short construction bond, okay, that falls back into what we were saying before. Decommissioning plan and bond, one thing we talked about was making sure that flexes with time if the inflation conditions change, who knows, regular, you know, whatever is required in order to make that happen. If the bond has to be increased as time goes on, that has to be built into the agreement. And recycling of used panels. A lot of people brought that up. Again, kind of out of our purview, as long as it's, you know, decommissioned and removed and the site is returned to whatever, you know, farming or meadow. And also it's hard to know what's gonna be in 25 years when they're taking these panels down. What is the technology? What is the industry like for recycling these things? What happens after 25 years? We won't know. Oh, well, no, don't. I don't want to go into like. I just want to go over these categories. So, what happens after 25 years? Just that they might, you know, we might need more of these. You know, they might say that, hey, we want you to keep this thing up. You know, we can't assume that it's going to be taken down in 25 years. You know, it's on. I don't know, Warren. I mean, like, are we right? I mean, we can't know. Like in 25 years, the state may be like, we need more, you know, keep going, or technology changed, or there's more energy needs. So I would advise the board to think that like this is there permanently. They plan to take it down to 25 years, but it's hard to know what those conditions will be like. Ownership and conservation plan. So we heard from Nexamp since this, that a lot of people brought that up, like who's Carson Power, et cetera. You know, how, and some of the members have brought up to making sure that the agreements that are reached with the applicant being Carson Power, or, you know, whoever's taking this over, Nexamp, the REIT that's going to own the land, all those people are bound by any agreements and promises that are made in the application. So that's a summary of the comments that we received at the hearing. So close that out, and Warren, I will send you this because it's all fleshed out after that. Again, it didn't really exist.
Hey, and Mike, could you also send that to me? I haven't
I
seen
will.
it. This is the first time I saw the completed version. Yeah.
I had a question.
Sure.
How about the pilot proposal?
Yeah, that's one.
Taxes.
The taxes, that's one thing I forgot to have in there. And what about you? What's your question?
Well, my question is, when the solar array is recycled, what is the tax situation for that property once the pilot expires? And they are going to keep paying the payment in lieu of taxes once the solar thing is
Well, once the solar goes away, it's then farmland.
right. Okay,
So then if they,
but under conservation, so they're going to have a tax break at that point. And what impact would that have long term?
well, it'll be,
15 years, I think.
what's that one?
It's 15 years for the pilot agreement.
The pilot agreement is 15. It doesn't cover the whole 25, so it has to be renegotiated at that
Well,
point.
after that, they're not exempt. I don't think they're exempt from taxes, but we haven't worked out a pilot agreement yet.
Right. And that would be done with the town board. Yeah.
That the town board will do with the applicant.
And it would be like a condition that the applicant would need
Yeah,
to
we
work
have a
that
pilot-
out.
We have a pilot law that requires them to enter into a pilot agreement.
Okay, I guess I was asking, is that something we have to consider and negotiate?
No, you don't
No.
get involved.
Okay,
And planning board doesn't get involved.
People brought that up about the taxes and again, And it's partly my fault. I had Andrew have that example of just what the money would be, and then people, what is it, anchoring, fallacy, where people saw that and like started talking about that was like this, set in stone thing. And like, no, again, that was just an example, just to show in a very roundabout way, like, you know, one of these agreement, what the agreement might look like, or some bounds of the lower bounds of the agreement. And that is something to be worked on, as we said multiple times, between the town board, the school district, and the county. And as far as his consideration of that as a bet, I mean, that's once we don't add that even into our calculations at all.
You said though, you say it's a negotiation. If they are approved for a site, what is the angle? How can you negotiate with somebody who's got an approval?
Well, it's a condition of it.
Right, but they might not be as generous as they would be if they had.
They'll be as generous as we think they should be.
But if we approve, part of our approval, the condition is that they negotiate.
They enter into a pilot, that's.
Right, and if they can't get that negotiating done, then the approval doesn't happen,
Yeah.
right? Just like any of the other, like a DOT permit or any of these other things that we add as conditional.
There's frameworks for the pilot.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know, I can't think of anything else at this point.
No, I just want to know what you're planning on doing on Saturday, so.
We're gonna go over then and I'll send you that document tonight, and you'll see the answers to all those categories, answers, maybe some further questions here or there. I'll adjust after tonight. We cleared some things up tonight that was in there. And you know, again, all members, please go on, log on, look at it, add changes if you want. And then we're going to present that. We're gonna have Frank there. He'll talk
Frank
about,
coming?
yes, Frank is coming, talk about the secret process, etc. Warren, you'll comment on that also, and any other things that you want to comment, process. George, you'll be there, yes? Yes, please. And then if there is time, we might have limited public comment.
Okay, that's what I want.
Right, that is, I have not promised that as of yet. We'll see how, you know,
Close the public hearing.
we are not gonna close the public hearing, the time, you know, we'll see how the time frame is and how many people want.
Library would love to have us out of there by
we're
12:30
doing it at
because they have
the-
another event going on.
Library.
Okay, at the library, yes, 10:30.
2 hours, it should be nice.
Yeah, please. Again, you know, hopefully the people will comment based upon what they're seeing today, not overall, you know, go back on to reiterate the same things they've told us already. And of course, anyone who, you know, who's watching this or here and wants to send more written comments, you're welcome to send them either by email to the planning board at pineplains-ny.gov or mail them in or whatever. Okay, so with that, for that application, we're done with that one.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
I'm gonna sign off and I'll enjoy seeing people in person on Saturday. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, all right. Bye-bye
Do
now.
that.
Right?
Okay, so we had a snafu in the process somewhere along the line, and there's miscommunication between the applicant, the town, and departments in the town. So there was an application that was submitted in February for the Scene property, the CEEN, and that we just approved for equipment storage in the light industrial section. And but now they want to change their use to mixed use of equipment storage and manufacturing. Is that accurate? Represent, and Wesley's here representing the client, and if you could if we could pull it up, Tricia, please. And
Well, I'm gonna pass out some of these site plans. So yes, we were in front of the board for equipment storage, and this is the old Dillinger farm. Most of you are here and kind of remember it. And the barn was converted into a heated indoor space. We had a few of the board members that came and checked it out. In the meantime, one of the considerations was the New York State DOT entrance. The last application is approved, but still subject to the DOT entrance, which the DOT is a very fast entity in New York State. They finally got back to the original application, told the engineer exactly what they wanted for the plan. The plan consists, which I have a copy of the Dillinger property has 2 driveways going in. They want pretty much the first 25 feet blacktop on both sides of that entrance, along with some curbing both to the north and the south, just like any commercial entrance. In that process, we also owe Warren a maintenance agreement. And before we wrote up that maintenance agreement, Warren, or made it official, we wanted the DOT's recommendations, so we knew exactly what we had to do rather than do one, get information from DOT and then change that. So it's still in the process, and that's why we're waiting on DOT. They expect an approval within 30 to 60 days. That's what I was told. In the meanwhile, the big open spot of the building where they were going to park campers and whatnot was found out by a small company out of Boston Corners, Chris Regan and Jerry Peel own, which is Alchemy Pure. And they discussed a lease agreement to rent that portion of the building to do manufacturing. When we recently did the comprehensive plan and the zoning changes, one of the things that we talked about was this light industrial zone that we wanted to do manufacturing and stuff in that zone. So I took a look at the zoning, the definition, and the definition. I've written a letter. Unfortunately, it never got sent out to anybody, but pretty much defines the definition of what the zoning says manufacturing is. And it's pretty much taking a product and then making it so you can disperse the product. And that is what we are doing. Now, to do this manufacturing in the light industrial zone, one of the things that, and I was on the board that did it, was that we said to have a manufacturing, even though it's allowed by special use permit, it has to be over 5 acres. The unfortunate part is there's no parcels that are 5 acres that are in the light industrial zone. So one of the things you'll find in my waiver, which gives the board the ability to make waivers, is that we're going to have a waiver to not have a 5 acre parcel in the light industrial zone to be able to have manufacturing. And then a few other waivers that I put in there of topography that we got last time. As the project area is flat, there's not going to be any detriment to stormwater runoff or things of that nature. But you'll find that all in the letter. In the meanwhile, I'm representing the owners of the building, even though they've come to a lease agreement with Chris and Jerry to do their business. Chris and Jerry's business will be taking a plant product, cannabis plant product, and then being able to disperse it to dispensaries in New York State. They currently have a license from New York State to do this. Am I correct in saying that? And And
we have a cultivation license.
the cultivation license. It'll provide anywhere between 5 to 10 jobs at site. Some of the considerations that we had thought about, for safety, obviously, is security. Obviously, the mitigation of any potential smells that could occur from this type of activity. With that, I'll submit to the board the odor regulator and filter stages of what we're planning on to putting in there. The process inside will consist of approximately 2 trips with their van that they own per week, bringing product from the fields into the facility and 2 leaving. And then the daily employee traffic of 5 to 10 employees that will be employed inside the building. So traffic should be very much a minimal, nobody going in, going out. Obviously, it's the manufacturing, there's no selling, there's no anything of that degree, there's no outside presence. Very regulated by the state laws and the state regulations. With that, I love to answer some questions. I'm not gonna know all the questions, so I'm gonna probably give it to Jerry and Chris to answer some of these questions. But that's pretty much where we are in the application process and why we're in front of you tonight.
So it's far enough from the school personally.
Yes, all of the properties in the light industrial district say 500 feet, right, is the zoning requirement, so.
Well, it's not retail. So.
What do you?
What's up?
It's not retail, so I don't think it.
Matters.
It doesn't fall into
But I think
the-
it is. You know, if you do the center door to the school, it is gonna meet the 500, but it's not.
So I went off of the closest point, which is the cafeteria of the school, to the closest point, which will be next to the storage shed, which was 479 feet, I believe. So if we went from the school entrance, you're gonna be over 500.
It's usually the midpoint of the door.
But with that said, after all our research and those looking into it, that it only is defined as retail and not manufacturing.
It does meet it and it's not retail anyway.
Right.
So, but again, and to speak to the waiver issue, I think this is really an amendment of the approved site plan. So all those waivers are still gonna run with the land. We don't have to re.
That's what I was talking to Drew when I first submitted. That was like, is this an amendment or is it a whole nother application? The other application hasn't closed out because of the DOT.
Right.
So if it's an amendment, that's great. However you think or the board thinks you want to handle it. I mean, really, it's not much is changing. We're just going.
Well,
moving to
except that
next
the
year.
manufacturing, we didn't give these waivers. Because this all relates to manufacturing.
The waivers are for site plan.
Oh, the site, no, but there's
The second-
more waivers. There's
Yeah.
more, yeah, the
Yeah.
site plan waivers, but there's all
Right.
these waivers. Manufacturing,
100-foot setback.
Yeah, 100-foot
Those are
step-
different.
right,
The site plan setbacks that we already gave. So I'm saying the site plan ones, in other words, like the topo and whatnot.
oh, yeah, yeah,
That we don't,
yeah,
if we view it as an amendment, I think,
Got it.
then we don't need to
I agree.
rehash that.
Does the draft cannabis law play into this at all?
No, because that has to do with
Retail sales.
dispensaries, and only dispensaries.
With the initial operation that we approved, still be ongoing, or was that not gonna happen?
Yeah, so, the areas, the letter that I handed out shows you a schematic of the building. And like when you walked into it that night, that big area, when you first walk in, there was like that little bit, I'm gonna call it an office space. And then the big room, that's only gonna be for this company's usage. The other part will still be for equipment storage. The one part of the building will be one person is renting it for their equipment. And this will probably, limits how many tenants you have or how many things, pieces of equipment that you're kind of renting it to, which kind of makes it a little more secure, a little less traffic, you know who's going in and out, and in my opinion, a little less.
Licensed by New York State.
Yes.
They have a license. They have one. They could grow license.
I,
Less than 5 acres.
You know.
We're gonna ask Lauren about that.
Company, the
It seems to be
owners
a
of the
waiver.
property, want to be
Drew is of the
very
opinion that these
environmentally
sections of the
conscious
code,
as
10,
well as
100-56
conscious of light
is
pollution.
waiver. Sorry.
My hearing is
Sorry,
terrible,
Mark.
but I can't.
So one of the things that we thought about was the potential of the smell. And my main thought process and what we talked about with Chris and Jerry is the last thing we would want to do is the smell of cannabis drifting over to the school. So how can we mitigate that from ever happening and make sure that you as a board approving it also are sure that that's not going to happen? So what they did was they did quite a bit of research on these different purifiers and the carbon scrubbers and things of that nature and the production rate of what they're putting through the process of what's going out and the airflow, and have come up with that this is a solution that will keep the whole area and the neighborhood from the smell of
And if I can just chime in,
yes.
and thank you all for giving us a chance to talk to you so late. I know you've had a long meeting, so we appreciate this. We are really not going to be creating that much smell either, because we're not growing, we don't have open plant. You know, for the most part, we're going to have the crop as a dried product that's going to be stored and sealed there. We're taking that and putting it into jars, and we're taking it and turning it into cigarettes. So it's not that there's not going to be a moment where the whole place is filled with marijuana. It's all going to be closed up and sealed up. But we are consulting, we're getting a design for the space, and included in that is, you know, odor mitigation, so we don't have any smell. You know, even inside, we don't want it to be really stinky. And Warren was curious about the whole license and everything, so I can explain that. Both Jerry and I we're both local farmers. I've been in Millerton for 25 years. Jerry's up in Ankrum. And because we were hemp growers, licensed hemp growers, the state gave out what are called conditional cultivation licenses this past summer. And under that license, you could grow up to an acre, and you could also minimally process, they referred to it. So we could dry the flower, we could cure it, we could put it in jars, we could sell it to dispensaries, as well as making pre-rolls and selling those. And that's all we can do at the moment. We're going to apply for a processing license, which will allow us to do other things, but primarily what we want to do is what's called solventless extraction. So we're going to be taking frozen marijuana and just getting extraction through just ice water. No chemicals, none of the toxic stuff that some extraction methods use. And then also rosin pressing, which is just pressing marijuana between two plates. So again, it's not using any chemicals or anything like that. It's the sort of the most minimal processing, the cleanest.
And what comes out of that processing? What do you end up with if?
Well, you end up with what's called rosin. It's just sort of a concentrated form of the cannabinoids and the terpenes that are in the plant. And you can put that into edibles, or you can actually put it into products that people can actually smoke.
So
It's often used by medicinal applications because it's so concentrated.
Where are you in the licensing process?
We're fully licensed as the conditional cultivators, and that runs until the end of runs until June of 2024.
24,
Yeah. We will be applying for the processing and distribution licenses, which will give us the ability to have that type of extraction as soon as those license applications are available, which is probably midsummer, late spring, midsummer. There's nothing available yet.
But the cultivation license covers this process.
Yeah, the conditional cultivation license does, because they didn't have any, they got us going so that the dispensaries, which they hope to open at about this moment, would have something to sell. So they gave this conditional license out and included this minimal processing, where we're just putting it in jars. That's primarily what we're going to be doing over there.
So do we have that? Do we have a license? Do we have a?
No, I did not provide the license in there. I figured that would
I
be.
want to see all that.
Yeah.
How much water would you need? if you were doing
Well,
that
when we
process?
get to the ice water hash making, it's a container of, 40, 50 gallons.
Mhm.
And you're probably running that, my guess is like 10 times in a day at the most. But it's not a great deal of water. It's a very concentrated, sort of small process, sort of an artisanal way to handle the product.
And does that water get filtered? Does it go into the ground like that? Does it get filtered out? Like, so there's like no, like, yeah.
There's a go.
Yeah, where does it go? Like after it's used?
Well, and we haven't gotten to the stage where we have even applied for that part of it. So it's sort of beyond my understanding completely what we'd be doing, but it's not a great deal of water and I'm sure we would be filtering it. We wouldn't just be dumping oily water on the street or something. Yeah.
If it would it go into the septic, you mean, or would it go?
Yeah, or
yeah,
yeah,
if it goes into the ground and percolates down, is there like, marijuana like in the water kind of thing? I don't know, I'm asking.
We're also,
There's
we're also talking about I understand everybody looks at it as something that it was 5 years ago, but today it's a plant-based material, just like any farmer, whether it's alfalfa or whether anything. And what I can say is, 3 years ago, they were putting thousands of gallons of washed chemical material out of that wash barn into the ground there. And I can guarantee you that whatever's coming out of the ground now is probably a lot less a lot better environmentally friendly than what was in there.
Right, but we still have to take into account what is happening. We worry about what, just because it's better than the past doesn't make it good. So we have to.
The septic field on this site. Okay, so it's a tank, it's not a field.
Yeah, so it goes in and then out into the gravel area.
So is there an issue with the septic capacity if you start this water treatment process? In terms of additional water that you'd be putting into your septic and whether you'd have to.
Are you
saying is the
septic system size appropriate?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, normally they size it per bathroom, right? However many bathrooms.
But you gotta figure out how much water was the cow barn putting through a septic system every day to wash all the milk tanks and everything. You're talking about.
But will the Department of Health have to weigh in on that, George?
So I guess it depends how we're using the term septic system. If it's a septic system regulated by the sanitary code, for instance. When we're talking bathrooms, wastewater from a human type of a generation, right? Those systems are not allowed by law to accept flow from anything that's not considered what they call sanitary waste.
Okay.
So if they had a gray water system that was being used in the barn, which was not a regulated sanitary wastewater system, then that's a totally different thing. And then you could do a comparison saying there was 3,000 gallons going out per day before, and there was no issues. It wasn't running along the road. It wasn't running the neighbor's property. Now we're going to put 500 gallons into it. So
it has to be going to a separate. So is there bathrooms in this building right now?
There is a
like I say, I'm not familiar with the plumbing in there or the
Right.
situation. I'm just in generality. So,
But if there is a regular septic there,
If it's
this
a
stuff
regular-
has to go into a different
could not
system.
go into that, right? That's the state law.
There are other holding tanks there from the farm before, is that right?
I don't wanna go out on a limb and tell you exactly what's in the ground there. We can
One
do
of
some
these
research,
things,
but if it makes the board feel better, obviously, if
Probably
design
gravel.
of what you need there. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
a lot of
pure
gravel
gravel,
right
whatever, you're gonna have the
It's
best percolation, right?
Faster and easier to simply say, dry well, precast, 8 foot around, 4 foot deep. It's gonna get buried here. It's HS 20 loaded for traffic. And we're
Or
gonna-
just the gray water
We're
and.
talking gray water, yeah, so where you're washing, where you're gonna dump. So there's no bathrooms going into it. So the bathrooms are going where the bathrooms have always gone. There's no increase in use to the bathrooms. Wash water is gonna go over here. And then that's totally admissible. That's totally allowed. And you wouldn't have to
Would
try
that,
and figure out the plumbing
is
and
that
what
a-
is or isn't going on.
is that an approval by the Dutchess County Health Department, or would that be something that we would submit to
I
you
don't-
to take a look at and say, hey,
Yeah.
this makes sense to
Right.
me, and
Yeah,
it looks
Dutchess
good.
County
and-
doesn't regulate those.
I
that
can
would be-
come up with
yeah.
the quantity too. I'm just guessing because I really.
No, I
haven't done that
understand.
much
I'm just,
research yet,
again,
but
in generalities,
Yeah.
and it is.
I don't think it's gonna be a great deal of water.
So if that suffices the board, I'm happy to do a engineer's report with a percolation rate, do some deep tests. And then a formal consideration of where a dry well and it's some sort of a minor engineering plan to submit to George. That George can look at and give you his feedback on or make any adjustments that he would think that would be needed on the site.
All we need to know what's there now. First,
What we need to know what?
what's there now, that make it easier, right?
There was like a slurry
I
tank.
know,
and
I
like
know.
gross.
Is similar to like what you were saying earlier about, just because it's better than what you did before, doesn't mean it's legal. What I'm saying is, no matter what size septic system is there now, sanitary system,
Right.
you cannot put wash water.
No, yeah, I get that.
So the easiest and quickest thing to do
Is to put
is
in,
to say.
It'll be just
we're not gonna
cleaner,
use it.
then we know what it's going
We're gonna
into.
put it in
as
a
opposed to-
drain, wherever we're gonna have our washing, and it's gonna go through a new pipe into a gray water system. And then all we need to know is that that system can take. And my knowledge of the area here, which isn't as good as all of you, but everything I've seen and learned in pine plans over the years is
you got the best gravel. in
pretty
Dutchess
darn
County.
well drained soil, so.
The other thing, Drew even commented, he wants to see. An inside plan for like what's going where within the factory.
Sure, manufacturing.
Yeah, where it's manufacturing, I mean, you have storage here. So I guess the storage is gonna be the storage of equipment.
So
Where it
that's
says
the
storage.
mixed use. So only in that hashed area, in that 9,000
Right.
square feet will be the thing, along with the office space. I don't know if that.
But he wants a plan for he doesn't want just a blank area, he wants a plan for
Yeah, we can.
where things are
Approximately
going.
what's happening.
Yeah,
where.
what's going on inside the manufacturing.
Yeah, the building code's pretty specific.
Yeah,
Manufacturing is like a full plan.
Right.
But again, that's not really gonna hold us up at the planning board level.
Right.
But yeah, like a lot of ag stuff is exempt from a lot of plans and whatnot, except when you have manufacturing / processing.
Warren. There's all this,
I don't think you can waive the 5 acre requirement.
yeah, what is
Gotta
it,
get a
Drew?
variance.
Drew was saying that he thought we could.
Under
He
what
said, well,
period?
anything under 1,100-56, but yeah, it looks to me like it's a variance to my eyes when I look at it, but what, you know what he was talking about, like why he would say
I
that?
haven't seen anything from Drew.
Well,
There's a letter from Drew.
no, there's no letter from Drew, but
So, but
yeah, we can get him to call you or to send you a letter, but
Yeah.
so.
I kind of lay it out in the special use permit procedures of 100/55 G. Number 3, the waiver, the planning board may waive any specific requirement set forth in 156. 156 is where it says that it needs to be 5 acres. So the zoning law is giving us under 155 decision waiver saying that we can waive anything in the special use permit. The special use permit is the one that's saying that we need the 5 acres.
Well, I'll take a look at it. I think.
But it'll lay it out right for you in the letter to make your determination. And I'm not trying to pressure anybody or do anything. But I took a real hard, long look at it. It took me 2 days to write this letter.
Nice job, Austin.
You did a good job.
I mean, there's no, yeah, exactly. There's no 5 acre anything in town that has.
Maybe that was the intent. Yeah. The planning board can say no to anything they want.
And you know what really irked me was I was the one of the ones that made the problem. And here I am.
I mean, this section 100-55 looks, I mean, it does seem to,
Well, I'll take a look.
yeah, look at it.
I'm not making a determination.
I know, I don't expect you to.
But I'd like to see the license. Yeah, we can.
And investigate our code and see what's going on with this stuff.
And I think I'd like to see what's going on inside too, so even though it may not be part of our site plan.
Certainly, we'll get that inside. We'll get some sort of plans to get to you, and also the license will scan and send as well, and we'll get that over to you as well. Is there anything else? I mean, we dealt.
The plan for the water.
Review the site?
No.
As a condition of the license?
right?
Well, they do, we do submit, we have to get approval for the spot, yes. And we've already done that. We've already got approval.
For this spot.
Okay,
We've already
I want
paid
all that documentation.
You bet. Easy.
I would, if we're gonna.
And the plan for the water. You're gonna have to see that.
For George to review.
Okay.
I'm hopeful, the only thing that they're gonna do for security, there obviously needs to be security measures, is I was there today, I saw you put in a security system to get in, and I was also told that there'll be cameras put on site there as well. The lighting is gonna remain the same as we talked about last time. And the hours of operation are not gonna be anything crazy. I think we talked about 8 to 5.
Pretty much, yeah.
Is what we talked about. So I mean, a regular workday kind of atmosphere. But we'll get that in writing as well to narrow it down to be part of it.
No signage.
No signage, no signage.
Monday to Saturday would be typical, yeah. Farmers will like to work.
All right. So yeah, we'll get those things and work on that. We'll get everything to Warren.
You want a long, should we have a long form?
Long
I-
form.
Trip any of
I also think that it's kind of a,
Turning manufacturing use in agricultural.
No, it's a light industrial zone.
Yeah.
I also think it's smart for us as applicants and for you as the board. To notify the neighbors and let the cat out of the bag as soon as possible. Because there could be things, I try to think of everything that I possibly can, and you can sit here at the table and try to think. But if we do send the notifications and something comes out of the woodwork at the meeting, the next, then we can address it in a timely fashion rather than we wait. So the sooner that we could have a public hearing to hear any of the public's comments or anything else that may arise that we could deal with then, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, but we have to have all the information in front of us before we're setting a public hearing.
Is there a time sensitive?
Yes.
I mean, we're already paying rent and
Yeah, well, I'm just
for
figuring.
us there is, yeah.
I got this email 3 hours before the meeting. I haven't seen this, I haven't seen that, I haven't seen that. That's why I haven't commented yet.
Yes,
I-
we're
I
not
don't-
setting that.
I know it's preliminary discussion, but like the public hearing, that's.
You want to fully?
Yeah.
Right, I understand that, but you also have to understand, I handed in this application that didn't get to you on February 8th, almost 4 weeks ago.
Understood.
It doesn't matter, we haven't seen it
Right.
until tonight, so
Um,
the reason is that, but. I think we should have a full EAF on this.
What type of action did you say?
I don't know, I have to take a look.
What would
I mean,
what would
just
cause
logged
a
on
full
our desk
full
tonight.
EAF?
Hmm?
What would cause a full EAF?
Our asking for full EAF would cause you to produce full EAF.
I'm asking the board and you, what would be the threshold to cause us to?
Within the discretion of the lead agency, I'm assuming it'll be legal, well, I don't know.
Am I being out of line asking why we should do an EAF when there's not a reason? I guess that's my concern.
Well, we
More
have
information
to do at
about
least a short form. I mean, if Warren thinks we need to do a long form, a fully, you don't do. So,
I think it's up to the board.
yeah, I'm saying if,
I mean, we're really gonna be low impact.
I mean, so we also gotta keep.
yes,
this-
but you got to remember, like what you were saying about the public getting to know the information. And as you might want to notice with the previous application, which you're dealing with, we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence on, and respecting the process and going through the steps and making sure that all the crevices, and like you said, this is a first, not only for the applicant and for you, the first for us and the town. And we want to make sure that there's no, oh, we should have thought of this. And,
You're gonna have some public
right.
input on this.
Although I mean, there might be.
I mean,
It's in an area where we'll see. But I mean, how many people came out for the dispensary law? Not too many. And that's like more of a, that's more of a, you would think
Impact.
of an impact on.
I recommend a fully.
And I'm not trying to discourage anything that you guys think is necessary, but I do, I do think it's important to know that we're only gonna be doing very minimal, effect. We're not gonna be using any chemicals, we're not gonna be.
And that'll be reflected in the EAF.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with everybody here. Well, the applicant is not Jerry and Chris. The applicant is the owners, and the owners are for a mixed use of manufacturing. If Jerry and Chris walk away and they move, any other manufacturer could come and go into this building. So in my opinion, it's the board's decision to make sure that the manufacturing is of the essence of what the town zoning law is. It's not whether cannabis is going to be produced there or whether.
No, but if you're making something, if they were making ammunition, it would affect like how, how we would consider the product, whatever you're manufacturing has to go into the equation of whether we're giving the.
So are you guys
approval.
growing all year? Like, how does that work? Are you,
Am I,
you have greenhouses or are you,
Seasonal.
so is it gonna be only,
Warren, sorry, Kate, I just want to get, what I said, is that wrong? That we have to consider what you're manufacturing, regardless of what,
Sure.
okay, sorry. Kate, I didn't know.
Does that,
so are you gonna be doing it all year round? Or are you just,
Well,
or are you gonna get other,
no, we'll be using the space probably year round. Yeah, I mean, we'll be processing, we'll be taking cured material and putting it into packages in the winter time. In the summertime, we'll be using storage space there, so it'll be in use, yeah.
but what's not to say that it's gonna, the use is gonna increase then? Too.
I mean, I don't know. We don't plan on making a giant company. We're planning on just using the space. We're contained by the licenses. The licenses are just 1 acre each. And we're not planning on bringing in material and creating more product. We're planning on just processing our own material.
Yeah,
And that's-
the limiting factor, because on the farm that we're leasing to do the actual cultivation, there is no storage or processing facility there. So we've had to find, we have facility to dry the product there, but there's no facility to store it or to process it.
Ha-
Which is why we're looking for a lease. We've been looking for a lease property to do that in.
And you're saying your license, the growing license is 1 acre each?
Yeah.
And that's not the temporary part? Or is that part of the, so when it becomes a permanent license, that won't increase, or it doesn't
So
allow?
ag market sent, like, we got the opportunity too, because Daniel, because if you have had a hemp license, they sent it out to everybody.
Okay.
And for $2,500, you could get a license to grow.
Yeah. But in answer to your question, we have a conditional license right now. We can apply for a full license next year in 2024, but that will not be of any larger size. It'll be the same.
And it's just up in the air as to how New York is,
Right.
they're going very slowly as
Right.
Warren
They've
was saying.
they've actually already said how big a cultivation license we can apply for.
Yeah,
And on a permanent basis, and it's no larger. I don't know.
I don't have a problem with what's being manufactured, whatever. I just don't have any information or not much.
Right, what, doing just the long form, how is that versus the short form?
I'll do the long form. I don't see the point in it, but I'm happy to do it.
It's humorous. But if we could get the license, I can't believe you submitted this application without submitting your license.
Yeah, so we want to make sure we gather all the information
Yeah.
that we. Okay, so that's the road forward with this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
On to the next.
So Warren, let's finish with Warren so he can leave. I'm not done, but so we spoke about the so the whole committee on open government, they changed the law last year, allowing people to attend public, of public bodies to attend meetings remotely through teleconferencing or whatever, video conferencing. However, it's only in extraordinary circumstances, like you're sick, your child's sick, your childcare fell through, your car broke down, something like that. Not, I'm traveling, not, I'm living in Florida for 3 months. I'm not, sorry, Vicky. We got, not, anything of convenience is how they termed it. Only out of, I forget what their terminology, like unexpected, emergency or whatever, unanticipated. So, but in order to even do that, and we actually were kind of doing things a little wrong, like if someone is on Zoom, they can't even participate, they can't talk, they can only watch, they can't vote. We knew about not voting or not counting towards quorum, they can't. And Ethan pointed, sent me, took a course and sent me the hey, did you notice this? And then I talked to the Committee on Open Government. So what we would have to do in order to make that possible for the board is Warren would have to draft a resolution. And we would pass a resolution saying that we are allowing our members to do that in case of emergency. And then we'd have to, I think, vote and say that this is a qualifying emergency at that meeting and say, okay, well, that person can participate from a non-public location. Otherwise, you would have to publish and allow the public in to wherever you are video conferencing from. So like your house or wherever, hospital room, I don't know. So Warren, did you get a chance to look at the thing?
You have to pass, well, I mean, the way I've done it is we passed a video conferencing local law. I can't remember which town we did it in, but I have a prototype for it. So we'll have the town board pass that law.
Well, they said we can pass a resolution. I mean, we don't have to wait.
Yeah, I think we should have a local law.
They sent model language. I sent it to you.
Yeah, no.
So you think it should be a local law,
It
not,
can be passed by the planning board?
it could be either. So by resolution of the body or local law. It just be fair. I mean, it'll be months and months, how many months? We could,
The video conference local law. I think the town of Northeast.
Sarah, is the town board considering such?
No,
No.
that's the first I've heard of that.
Okay, so,
We might be against it, so you better pass your resolution.
so, yeah,
Wouldn't they need one as well?
for them to do it, yeah.
Yeah.
But if they don't want it, maybe they don't want it. I mean, they have different considerations as a political body, for a political body.
I think that the planning board, I think it's a very good idea for the planning board to make that possible.
Especially since we can't
I
get
still
input.
feel differently about the town board, actually.
So even if we pass the resolution, you still can't have any input if you're on Zoom.
No, yes, you can. Then you can be a full, yeah, participant.
Only, if it's an emergency.
Only emergency. Yeah.
Plus, the area where you're voting from has to be accessed by the public. It's such
Oh.
an unwieldy process.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I don't, I think if it's under the exception, I don't think, under the exception, I don't think it has to be.
They said if you have an in-person quorum that you could
Right.
participate, you could vote. But that was within the confines of what we set up as emergency situations.
Well, let me take it up with the town board at our meeting next week. And then we can pass one law that would cover the whole town if we want to do that.
But like Sarah said, if the town board's not looking to do that,
Well, I
then,
don't know, we haven't discussed
Yeah,
it.
but it hasn't come up at all.
right. All right, we'll talk to them and then see
I
what,
don't
how,
see any emergency.
well, right now, no, but I mean, we've had some meetings where it's been close, where we haven't had a quorum, although I guess that one, we would still need the in-person quorum. I can't remember. I have to read the thing.
Unless there's a designated state of emergency within the town, and then you at least have one person here. And then you could have, like the other day when we had the ice storm,
Right.
if I decided to track my butt down here, then we could have the meeting still. That's a
Okay.
special
Well, I'll check those things somewhere. I don't know why they didn't just change the law. I don't understand. They changed it, but then they didn't really fix anything. This is the biggest problem. Like in today's day and age, like, did you really need physical? I mean, what do they want to see? To make sure that no one's holding a gun off camera, like to make sure you vote in a certain way or something. Yeah, you gotta, like, I don't understand.
Give me a chance to take a look at it.
Okay.
Let's not rush everything through.
I'm not, I'm just talking, all right, so, okay, the pending variances, did we figure that out?
I don't know. I have to look at the our statutes. I think it might be an area variance that's required.
What?
You
No,
talking about this thing?
no, I'm talking about, the one other thing there's 3 pending area variances in front of the ZBA. In the past, they've asked
I'm sorry.
for comments, and I even talked to Scott today, and he wasn't sure. And
No,
then
you're not required.
not required to have comment. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. All right. Now, the steward,
It would
so,
be a good idea for them to do that.
right,
It's discretionary.
it's discretionary.
They should
Okay.
really be, anytime they vote on I mean, there's some statutes which make the referral to the planning board mandatory. It's not in our statute, but
Okay,
it's a good practice for the ZBA to make a referral to the planning
for
board
comment.
for comment.
And they have in the past. There's,
Yeah,
and, but however, the Carson Power one is part of the coordinated review. And so they won't be able to finish that till we do our seeker, is that correct?
yeah, they have to finish, technically, they cannot issue the area variance until we complete our environmental review.
Okay,
So they can take it up to a certain point, but they can't actually rule on it. until we
and
finish.
Scott is aware of that, Scott.
Either we issue a neg deck, or if we issue a pos deck, then you have to do a DEIS.
Right.
And that will hold matters up even further, but they understand they can't
Right,
make a decision until
he's aware.
there's a secret determination.
But the Stewart's situation, we are gonna get that application, but it's not in front of us yet. So that's not a, so it's not a, if they approve it, but so that's not a,
For an extension of Stewart.
so that's not a coordinated review. It's just they're doing that first and then it's coming to us. Okay. All right, thank you.
Is there a hearing on the stewards?
Yeah, they're having 3 hearings this month on the same day, right, Tricia?
28.
On the 28th. Stewart's. There's apparently a section in law that doesn't allow accessory buildings to be higher than 21 feet. But that's not measured exactly from the peak. There's some sort of, it's measured from, there's some rule of where that's measured from. Drew explained it to me. And I was like, how did we never hear about this before? But like some guy's trying to build a garage and he has to go, like, we gotta fix that. Like, I don't understand like how we never came up against that or we didn't notice. You know, like that house up on the one that was gonna be the accessory house, but now it's, I mean, that's got, I mean, that's definitely over 20. It's like, what? Like, I don't, it's amazing how these things in the code, like all.
See, that's why there should be a referral process, because the ZBA, if they feel it's an unreasonable restriction, should make a recommendation for a change in our zoning law. I mean, that's what the purpose of this interaction between the agencies is all about. But we
Yeah.
never get
Well,
to the
Scott-
ZBA.
Well, I mean, Scott and I are both on the zoning review committee, so like we have that.
That may be something.
And do you have to do
Yeah,
it?
we are
one at- Can you do it one at a time, or do we need to, like
No,
we
we
did
can-
the last time, have an ongoing list and then make?
Yeah, we can change the zoning in one respect or several respects, or. Totally.
Well, I mean, there is cost considerations, because like when you try to, it's better to bundle them, or else you're getting, the planners involved and everything else.
Can't believe that.
Okay, all right, thank you, Warren. Thank you,
Saturday, 10:30.
yes, thank you, George. All right, we have 3. enjoy.
It's not a medical emergency.
Um, what was I gonna say? Oh, yes, so we have 3 minutes to approve or not approve. The first one is the January minutes. Did everyone get to look at them?
Yes.
And does anyone have any more changes than we're sent around with, we're just, typos, that sort of thing. So can I have a motion to accept the January, minute? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, those are passed. Next. This is the, January 21st special meeting, public hearing. I found one thing that wasn't quite, at one point, someone says EAS. I think it should be EAF, I would assume. There's no EAS, correct?
Mhm.
I didn't even see it.
I don't even know where it is. Okay, here it is. Marsh said in the EAS, it is checked. Yeah, so that's the EAF. That's on page 5. Otherwise, I didn't find anything else. Anyone else have anything on this one? Can I have a motion to accept the
Motion.
special meeting minutes from January 21st? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Next, we have the February 8th meeting minutes. Okay. Actually, I want something changed, because Vicky never said anything in February, right? She just sat there. So I just want to add that she did not count, George Corum did not participate in discussion. Otherwise, I think these are fine. Can I have a motion to accept the February 8th regular meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And that one's passed. Anything else? Trish, is there anything else? No, right? No. Can I have motion to?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned. What time is it?
The odor control, they should get insect.
10:15.